he got the biggest applause. Thank you, my brother.
It began with a $1.2 billion deal. Then, just as suddenly, it collapsed. The plan was to transform Ghana's bauxite into aluminum, building a value chain for national benefit. Overnight, the dream vanished, replaced by confusion and suspicion. Was it politics, foreign interference, or something deeper? The silence from leaders was deafening, leaving Ghanaians to wonder who truly controls their future. Unraveling the truth means confronting hard realities about power, promises, and the fate of a nation. Bauxite isn't just a rock, it's the foundation of aluminum, powering everything from smartphones to airplanes. Ghana's vast reserves could have fueled a new era of prosperity. The plan: refine bauxite at home, export finished products, keep the value in Ghana. But the richest deposits lie beneath the Atewa forest, a vital ecosystem and water source for millions. Environmentalists warned, destroy habitats and poison water. The nation faced a stark choice: industrial wealth or environmental survival. Ghana's leaders dreamed more than mining, an integrated aluminum industry. The goal: process bauxite into alumina, feed local smelters, create skilled jobs. This was a direct challenge to the old model, exporting raw materials for little gain. Infrastructure jobs, national pride were promised. But with the deal's collapse, the machinery of progress never started. Ghana was left with a vision deferred and a question: what now? Atewa Forest is more than trees. It's a lifeline for millions, home to rare species and vital rivers. Mining here would mean clearing ancient forest, risking water supplies and biodiversity. Activists and communities fought fiercely to protect it, proposing sustainable alternatives. The deal's collapse felt like a victory for conservation, but the conflict remains unresolved. The bauxite is still there, and so is the temptation. Ghana must still choose extraction or preservation. The deal was never just local, it was a move on the global chessboard. China sought bauxite for its industries, the West watched warily, and Ghana was caught in the middle. Pressure mounted from all sides, each with its own agenda. Was Ghana's sovereignty at stake, or was this a rare act of defiance? The collapse sent a message. Africa is not just a resource, but a player with its own voice. The world took notice. The deal was sold as a path to empowerment, Ghana controlling its resources, building its future. Leaders promised jobs, infrastructure, dignity. For many, it was a chance to break free from a history of exploitation. The collapse left hope in limbo, but also sparked new questions about self-reliance. Can Ghana chart its own course, or will old patterns persist? The dream endures, waiting for a new beginning. The narrative of self-sufficiency was at the heart of the campaign to win public support for the bauxite deal. The core message was that Ghana had all the necessary ingredients for greatness within its own borders, and that the time had come to harness them. The bauxite deal, therefore, was presented as the ultimate tool for achieving true economic independence. This language was carefully chosen to tap into a deep-seated desire for autonomy that runs through the nation's history. The promise of self-sufficiency extended into the lives of ordinary citizens. Ultimately, the language of self-sufficiency was a call to action, asking Ghanaians to believe in their own capacity to build a better future. The deal was not just a contract, it was a declaration of independence from the old economic order. Beyond the abstract ideals of empowerment and self-sufficiency, the deal's promise was made tangible through the vision of infrastructure. The government presented the bauxite project as a catalyst for a massive nationwide construction boom. Ghana's natural resources would be leveraged to build the physical foundations of a modern, prosperous nation. The deal was often called a barter agreement, exchanging bauxite for critical infrastructure. New roads, bridges, hospitals, schools. This made the benefits immediate and easy for the public to visualize. It was a clever political strategy addressing everyday frustrations. People stuck in traffic on congested roads, and people in communities with inadequate healthcare could see a solution. The promise: red mine dust transformed into smooth tarmac, modern hospitals, improved railway lines connecting the country. This bauxite for infrastructure vision countered environmental concerns as a trade-off. It framed the choice as stagnation versus progress, the deal as the engine to drive the nation forward. The scale promised was unprecedented. It included rail lines to the port and projects meant to benefit communities across the entire country. The message: share wealth nationally, unity, and equitable development. The deal was sold as a national development plan with bauxite as the financial cornerstone. Build the nation brick by brick, using earth beneath their feet as raw material. That imagery created ownership and shared purpose, not just for politicians or foreign corporations, for the people. Promised infrastructure as lasting legacy for generations. When the deal collapsed, the tangible vision disappeared, leaving a blueprint on the drawing board. Ghana's bauxite story is global. Mining giants have watched Ghana for decades, seeing its bauxite as a strategic asset. Their objective: secure low-cost bauxite to dominate the market. They aim to extract raw resources with minimal local processing, keeping profits abroad. This creates an uneven playing field, leveraging financial and political power. They prefer Ghana as a raw ore supplier, conflicting with Africa's resource sovereignty ambitions. The competition for Ghana's bauxite illustrates a wider phenomenon: a new scramble for Africa. This is a strategic competition for resources, influence, and economic dominance. China has become Africa's largest trading partner, offering infrastructure loans in exchange for minerals like bauxite, cobalt, and lithium. Western powers are now trying to counter China's influence, framing their approach as more sustainable. This geopolitical tug-of-war places African leaders in a precarious position. How can a nation make decisions based solely on its own interests when pressured by global giants? This new scramble forces African nations to navigate a treacherous geopolitical landscape. Foreign influence often operates in the shadows of debt and diplomacy. For decades, many African nations have relied on loans from international financial institutions and foreign governments to fund development projects. This creates a dynamic of dependency that can constrain a country's policy choices. Lenders have conditions that can range from demands for fiscal austerity to privatization of state assets, shaping a nation's economic path. Western creditors may view resource for infrastructure swaps with suspicion. The threat of a credit downgrade can influence a government's decisions. Foreign embassies are hubs of influence, engaging with government officials, opposition leaders, civil society groups, and the media. This web of financial obligations and diplomatic relationships means that true sovereignty is a constant struggle. The collapse of the $1.2 billion bauxite deal was not the result of a single failure. It was death by 1,000 cuts. A slow unraveling caused by a perfect storm of local, national, and international opposition. At the forefront was the powerful and relentless environmental movement. The choice to target Atewa Forest Reserve for mining galvanized a diverse coalition of opponents: local communities, national environmental NGOs, international conservation bodies. Some places are just too precious to mine. Water is more valuable than aluminum. This was a mainstream movement that captured millions. Their campaign was strategic and multifaceted. They organized grassroots protests. They held community meetings. They marched in the capital. They commissioned scientific studies documenting Atewa's biodiversity and watershed role. They took their case to the courts with legal challenges. This organized opposition became a major political headache for the government. While officials spoke of jobs and infrastructure, opponents warned of poisoned rivers, lost species, destroyed natural heritage. International media framed it as David versus Goliath. Negative publicity put intense pressure on the project. Ultimately, the environmental argument anchored broader opposition. The fight for Atewa became a powerful symbol, an immovable object that the bauxite deal could not break. The bauxite deal became entangled in Ghana's competitive political landscape. Opposition parties framed the agreement as a sellout, questioning transparency and alleging unfavorable terms for Ghana. This transformed the debate into a partisan battle. Political infighting created uncertainty for foreign partners. The prospect of renegotiation deterred investors. Constant political attacks chipped away at the deal's foundations. Internal divisions and potential political liability undermined the project. The deal collapsed within Ghana's turbulent political arena. The final and perhaps decisive factor in the deal's collapse was the immense weight of foreign pressure. The agreement was never just a transaction between Ghana and a consortium. It was a move on the global geopolitical chessboard, and other players were determined to influence the outcome. Western governments and financial institutions wary of China's expanding footprint in Africa applied subtle but powerful pressure. This pressure came through diplomatic channels, with ambassadors raising concerns about transparency, debt sustainability, environmental standards. It also came through international finance, where credit rating agencies and institutions like the IMF and World Bank signaled disapproval, making it harder and more expensive for a country to borrow. This scrutiny amplified local opposition. Ghanaian environmental groups raised the alarm about the Atewa forest. Their voices were echoed by international bodies like IUCN and WWF. Local activists questioned the terms of the Chinese-backed loan. Western financial experts warned about so-called debt trap diplomacy. The international chorus created a narrative that Ghana was on a dangerous path, isolating the government and making it appear out of step with global best practices. The government faced a choice: defy Western partners or abandon the flagship project. For the Chinese partners, the multi-pronged attack raised perceived investment risk. They are used to political complexity, fierce local opposition, legal challenges, and intense geopolitical pressure from the West created a hostile landscape. Projects mired in controversy, public protest, and international disputes are unattractive. They promise delays, cost overruns, and reputational damage. Eventually, political and reputational costs outweighed economic benefits, and investors reconsidered. Ultimately, the deal buckled under combined internal and external pressures. It was a cascade of failure. Local opposition provided the justification for political criticism. Political criticism bred instability. International pressure amplified domestic fissures into global controversy. The Ghanaian government was caught in an impossible squeeze, trapped between development ambitions and a powerful alliance of activists and international interests. Faced with overwhelming opposition, the deal, once hailed as the key to Ghana's future, simply fell apart. The cancellation of the bauxite deal was more than just a single project falling through. It represented the derailment of Ghana's entire medium-term economic strategy. The government had staked a big part of its development agenda on this one transformative venture. The bauxite for infrastructure barter was meant to be the financial engine behind Ghana Beyond Aid. Without it, a massive hole opened in the national budget and development plan. Roads, railways, hospitals, schools. Unfunded mandates now, ambitious blueprints with no clear path. The government is scrambling for a plan B that may not exist at the same scale. This abrupt halt sends shockwaves through the economy, creating deep uncertainty. The expected construction and logistics boom vanished overnight, hitting local contractors and suppliers. Tens of thousands of jobs, from high-skilled engineers to manual laborers, evaporated. A major blow for a country battling youth unemployment. The dream of an integrated aluminum industry to diversify away from cocoa and gold is deferred. Ghana is pushed back to square one, facing old vulnerabilities. Ghana's sovereign credibility takes a hit. International investors and creditors now question the country's ability to deliver large, complex projects. Perceived political risk and policy instability increase. Future investors may demand stricter terms and bigger assurances. The government's economic story is weakened. Attracting FDI becomes harder. A serious setback for Ghana's reputation as a stable, promising destination. Now the hard choice is: return to international debt markets, possibly accepting IMF conditions, impose unpopular austerity, raise taxes, or drastically scale back development ambitions. None are easy. The deal's collapse didn't just end a project. It altered Ghana's economic trajectory, forcing a painful, uncertain reassessment of the nation's future. The aftermath of the deal's collapse leaves a chilling effect on the investment climate. It sends a powerful and potentially damaging message to the global business community. When a government cancels a multi-billion-dollar agreement, it signals a high degree of risk. Foreign companies and financiers who were watching Ghana as a potential destination for their capital will now pause and reconsider. They will ask tough questions about the sanctity of contracts and the reliability of government assurances. This uncertainty acts as a powerful deterrent, potentially slowing the flow of foreign direct investment. not just into the mining sector, but across the entire economy, from manufacturing to technology. The immediate economic impact is the loss of the promised $1.2 billion in direct investment. This would have been injected into the Ghanaian economy, stimulating growth and jobs. But the long-term cost could be far greater. The saga creates a precedent that may scare away other large-scale investors. The country needs massive investment in energy, transportation, digital infrastructure. The shadow of the failed bauxite deal will loom over future negotiations. This forces Ghana to look inward, challenges and opportunities. Lack of foreign capital could lead to stagnation, or it could spur domestic investment and empower local entrepreneurs. Local capital markets may not be deep enough to fund projects on the scale of the bauxite deal, but the government could create a more supportive environment for Ghanaian businesses. Slower, harder, but possibly a more resilient, self-sufficient economy in the long run. Ultimately, the economic impact is one of deep uncertainty. The bauxite is still in the ground, a vast source of potential wealth. But the path to monetizing that wealth is now unclear and fraught with new obstacles. Will another foreign partner be willing to step in, and under what terms? Can Ghana develop the resource on its own? Or will the mineral remain locked beneath a protected forest, a symbol of the complex and often contradictory pressures shaping the nation's economic destiny? The collapse of the deal did not provide an answer. It only left a lingering and profoundly important question about where the investment for Ghana's future will come from. The news crashed into a society already alive with heated debate and deeply divided opinions. On the streets of Accra, in the mining towns, in the farming communities, there were many voices. For some, the collapse felt like a profound betrayal. They had been promised a new dawn of industrialization, a tangible path to prosperity. The feeling was one of a future stolen. Their frustration was a raw and powerful force, a sentiment that the national conversation had failed to adequately capture. They viewed the international pressure as a deliberate effort to keep Ghana in a state of dependency. The anger was not just about a lost contract, it was about the loss of agency. The cancellation was met with relief by environmentalists, farmers, and community leaders who had fought to protect the Atewa forest. It was the culmination of years of advocacy, but not a final victory. They saw Atewa as a life-giving source, not bauxite to be monetized. The collapse validated their belief that true development accounts for the well-being of people and the environment. This relief was shared by urban Ghanaians and intellectuals concerned about transparency and over-reliance on foreign partners. For them, it was a step back from a dangerous path, but the bauxite remains. The defenders of Atewa know the threat hasn't vanished, and the fight is far from over. It was a moment to breathe, but not to rest, in the war over Africa's future. Ghana's cancelled bauxite deal illustrates a fundamental challenge facing the entire African continent: the resource dilemma. This is the paradox of possessing immense natural wealth in a world where the rules are often set by others. Nations across Africa sit atop trillions of dollars worth of minerals, oil, gas, resources that should, in theory, guarantee prosperity. Yet this wealth has historically fueled conflict, corruption, and a cycle of dependency. This forces a painful trade-off between the urgent need for development and the desire for true sovereignty. Partners arrive with their own agendas and immense bargaining power, offering contracts that promise rapid progress, but often come with hidden strings. This ensures the lion's share of the profit flows out of the continent, leaving Africa with holes in the ground and a legacy of debt. This creates the sovereignty paradox. True sovereignty is the power to make independent decisions in the best interest of your people. Ghana's story is a microcosm of this continent-wide struggle, highlighting the difficulty of navigating this paradox. The fight for resources is a fight for the right to self-determination. The resource dilemma forces a critical question. If old foreign contracts are so fraught with peril, what is the alternative? The answer lies in redefining engagement, shifting from short-term extraction to radical value addition. African nations must process resources on their soil by building refineries, smelters, and factories. This requires investment, political will, a skilled workforce, and united leadership. African nations must become tougher negotiators, armed with geological data and stronger legal frameworks. A nation's greatest resource is its people and ecosystems. Invest in education, innovation, and technology to diversify economies. Value natural capital for its life-sustaining services. A new consciousness is rising across Africa, demanding a future where its wealth builds African prosperity on its own terms. The story of Ghana's bauxite deal does not exist in a vacuum. It is a single, powerful chapter in a much larger story unfolding across West Africa. Looking north to the Sahel's arid landscapes, a new assertive spirit is taking hold. Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger. A wave of defiance is rising against the old order of resource extraction. For decades, these nations saw wealth in gold, uranium, other precious minerals flow outward to foreign corporations and former colonial powers while their own people faced crippling poverty. Now a new generation of leaders, often from popular discontent and military coups, are saying no more. They challenge the foundations of the post-colonial economic model. This rising tide, resource nationalism, is driven by deep frustration and renewed sovereign pride. The people of the Sahel, like many in Ghana, are tired of seeing their land exploited. They see mining headquarters in Paris, London, Toronto, and contrast that with a lack of electricity, clean water, healthcare. New military juntas have tapped public sentiment, making contract reviews a core agenda. They are challenging deals signed by previous, often corrupt, civilian governments. This is leading to concrete action. In Mali, the government passed a new mining code increasing potential state ownership to 10%, 20%, 35%. In Burkina Faso, authorities have initiated audits of mining operations and are pushing for local processing of gold before export. Niger, a crucial global supplier of uranium, is also questioning long-standing agreements with French nuclear firms. These are not isolated incidents, they form a regional trend. A clear signal that the days of easy, highly profitable, minimally regulated mining concessions are ending. These Sahel actions give context to pressures in Ghana. While Ghana's politics differ, the underlying sentiment is similar. The debate over the Atewa forest and the bauxite deal was driven by questions of sovereignty, fairness, and national benefit. The Sahel's wave of defiance shows Ghana's experience is part of a continental awakening. African nations are demanding a new paradigm, resource wealth used for tangible progress and empowerment of their own people. Resource nationalism is rewriting the rules of the game for foreign investors in Africa. The era of lopsided contracts is over. Governments are using their power to change the terms. Companies must move beyond extraction and embrace partnership, integrating local communities into their business models. The new rules demand transparency and fairer wealth distribution. Governments want equity stakes, transparency, and value addition. This shift impacts Western powers and China. No foreign power is exempt from this new African gaze. The future of Africa's resources will be negotiated on Africa's terms. It is a power demanding its fair share. The story of Ghana's cancelled bauxite deal is a landmark case study in the modern struggle for African self-determination. It encapsulates the immense pressures nations face across the continent. The collapse of this agreement was a moment of national reckoning. The fight for true sovereignty, the kind Kwame Nkrumah envisioned, is far from over. It is fought in the hearts and minds of the people. The deal's failure revealed an intricate web of competing interests. Local communities, a government desperate for development, global superpowers, and multinational corporations. Navigating this web is the central challenge for modern African leadership. A united and vocal citizenry can challenge the power of government and international capital. The fight over Ghana's bauxite is a modern chapter in that history. This is the unfinished fight for sovereignty. Who owns Africa's future? Foreign governments, multinational corporations, international financial institutions, or the people themselves? Ghana's bauxite deal argues the future must belong to the latter. The decision to halt the project represents a claim of ownership. It's the essential work of building a legitimate democracy. It is a demand for a new kind of partnership, one based on mutual respect and transparency. It is a call for investors who see Africa as a continent of immense opportunity. The old model of pure extraction is dying. Ghana's decision shows the struggle is not over. The bauxite remains in the ground, a silent testament to the unresolved dilemma. A powerful statement has been made that the voices of the people matter. The fight for the future of Africa will be won or lost in moments just like this. This is Insight Africa, where the fight for never sleeps.